What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's Luminary Grant here. Today we're going to be going over My Hero Academia chapters 370 and 371. These chapters are very interesting because these chapters are going to go over a very important topic within the My Hero world due to the effects quirks have had on the population. They've separated the population by people who are heteromorphic, meaning that their quirks have changed aspects of their bodies, making them look more alien, and people who are oppressing those heteromorphs because they find them vile and disgusting. In the last chapter, we left off with All For One saying that victory is still within his grasp and showing the image of Spinner. So in this chapter, we're going to see exactly what he meant by that. We start the chapter off with Spinner leading the Paranormal Liberation Army towards the hospital where Kurogiri is currently being held captive. Spinner is leading his forces saying they locked up Kurogiri, but we're going to get him back. As multiple heteromorphs march towards the hospital, it says that the heteromorphic army is 15,000 strong, while the hero side is only 200 strong. Apparently, All For One has really thought this plan out, getting forces from multiple different places, so that way he can have a movement to allow him to get towards Kurogiri and outweigh the hero's numbers. President Mike then jumps up in the air and shoots out a loud shout, but the heteromorphs use a meat shield to block his attack. He then gets attacked, but Kota uses his quirk to save President Mike and bring him back to the ground. The police and Rocklock are trying to hold off the heteromorphic army, but they're having little to no success, being pushed back and overwhelmed. The heteromorphic army has also reached Kota, tackling to the ground as one of the heteromorphs rips off his mask saying, "Raised in a big city, were you traitor?" So apparently they also see heroes who are heteromorphs working on the side of the heroes as traitors, being that they've, I guess, grown accustomed to a society that looked down on them. The sub-leader of the heteromorphic army then stands on a balcony saying, "Rage, good citizens. Today is your Independence Day. Quirk counseling, quirk education, nothing but phony nonsense. We all know this all too well because of the forms we bear." The history of the paranormal is one of persecution and oppression for those who don't fit the mold. These days, society has reflected and made amends, or so they believe. But at the end of the day, beyond that, they still say, "We are creeps, we're disgusting." So he's using and in reality, this is true. Because back in the day, whenever quirks began, whose body went under a metamorphosis due to their quirks, and apparently society has not taken a liking to it, saying that these people have defiled the gene pool and are disgusting, and it's basically like an active form of racism and segregation going on inside the My Hero Academia world. And then the leader of the Paranormal Liberation Army says, "No, you people are no heroes of ours. Instead, it will be him who lives to prominence in society," as it shows a picture of Spinner. And it seems like Spinner isn't coherent of anything that's going on. Due to the ability One For All gave him, this giant quirk, apparently he also meddled with his mind, but Spinner doesn't seem to be coherent of anything going on, saying whatever, me just take back Kurogiri. So apparently the fact that All For One has given Spinner these quirks, he's also dulled his mind and made him less intelligent. As Spinner then prepares to swing on some of the police, he gets struck by Shoji, who delivers an octoblow towards him. The heteromorphic army then sees Shoji attack their rep, and they tackle him saying, "How freaking dare you? Kill the traitor. Crush the wannabe hero." As Shoji is then tackled to the ground, he says, "What does any of this have to do with attacking the hospital?" Back in Jaku, the first thing the heroes did was take action to make sure the patients and the staff were safe. But have you guys even thought about any of that? Do you have a plan? He then shakes everyone off of him and says, "You better have a plan, because if you don't, I won't stand for it." As we get to see a very interesting image of Shoji. We get to see his face. His face is basically exactly what it looks like with the mask on, but he has these scars on his face. And I think this is related to his treatment back in his hometown due to the segregation and oppression of the heteromorphs. So this chapter is very interesting because it seems like Horikoshi is trying to deliver a modern and political view of the world of My Hero Academia, saying that just because people have quirks doesn't mean that everyone was treated equal. People whose quirks manipulated aspects of their bodies and turned them into quote-unquote freaks. The majority of people didn't prescribe to the idea of allowing heteromorphs to live amongst them. The Liberation Front is trying to make a just movement, but for the completely wrong reasons. They're going about it the wrong way. I'm very curious to see where the next chapter is going to go. I'm shocked at how Spinner isn't coherent throughout the majority of this. Apparently, when One For All gave him this quirk, he just took some of his intelligence away. And maybe that's because Spinner wasn't 100% on One For All's side. Spinner was there originally because of Stain the Hero Slayer, and then because of Dabi, and then he pledged loyalty to Shigaraki because he was following what he believed in and what they believed in. He saw their beliefs and he wanted to become a part of that. But apparently One For All, he doesn't see him the same. So maybe that's why One For All has meddled with his mind while he gave him these quirks. I'm not really sure. But you guys let me know what you think about this chapter. This chapter seems to have a lot more real world aspects to it, and that's very interesting. I like the fact that Horikoshi has taken this stance to deliver a very powerful message. We start the next chapter off with Shoji speaking to Spinner saying, "Tell me you have a plan, because if not, I won't let this stand." As in the army then screams out, "Let us know what you want us to do, Rep. We're going back to Steel Kurogiri, even if it means sacrifice. Tell us what to do. We know you are true and just." Then Spinner replies, "Don't care," because he's out of his mind. He's just not there mentally. But the leader of the Liberation Front then speaks for him, saying that history is written in bloodshed, translating what Spinner is supposed to be saying, but it's not accurate. He's just trying to manipulate the minds of the rest of the army so that way they can keep moving forward towards their goals. As Shoji looks at Spinner, he says, "Spinner, you're gonna set us back 30 years. And Spinner tells him to shut up. He doesn't care. But while he's saying this, something's happening to his body, and we get a flash to All For One giving Spinner his quirk, saying, "If the body bulk doesn't get the job done, consider using this gift as well. Scale Mail will grant you power of defense and a form befitting a leader." As Spinner then is having a flashback to Shigaraki saying, "League of Legends, yeah, I play that, only offline though." So I'm guessing that the reason they put this panel in is because to show Spinner's conviction, because Spinner and Shigaraki apparently did establish a friendship, and his Spinner is holding on to that. Flashing back to the battle, Spinner then says, "Can't care anymore. Just keep moving," as he's covered. It looks like his body becomes covered in scales, thicker than the ones he already had, and it makes him look more like a monster as he uses his sword to slash Shoji, cutting off some of his limbs in the process. He then flings Shoji into the background as Kota then screams out for Shoji to make sure he's okay. The leader of the Paranormal Liberation Front then screams out saying, "We are martyrs for a revolution. Blood spilled today will lead to rights for a future hetero." We then flash back to Shoji having a conversation with his classmates with his mask off, revealing his scars. He then says, "My parents don't have arms like mine. We lived in an awful town. They all came out in force for a blood cleansing when I touched someone." Kota, Tokoyami, and others who grew up in cities must have read about it in textbooks about areas in the country where children are still made to bear scars like mine. He then says, "But my scars in heteromorphic form are bound to make people worried. So I wear a mask since I don't want anyone to think I'm out for revenge." He says, "Rather than think about all the bad memories related to my body, I'd rather cling to the one good memory related to this body." As we get to see a panel of Shoji saving a little girl who fell into a rushing river. Due to his quirk, he was able to save her, extending his arms. So rather than think about the oppression and abuse he suffered as a child due to his heteromorphic form, Shoji would rather hold on to the fact that his body allowed him to save a life. And all of his classmates rush in towards him and embrace him, as he then also says, "But I know it'll take more than one generation to tear down a wall that stood for centuries. So just like those who came before have done, I'll keep pressing forward. I'll be the coolest hero this world has ever seen to give good memories to the next generation." That's really cool. I really like the fact that even though Shoji was treated so badly in his childhood, he still has such a good heart that he wants to show the next generation that they don't have to be filled with rage because of how they're treated. They can still be heroes, and they can still make a difference by becoming heroes and making a stand for what they believe in, making a stand, showing the world that heteromorphic heroes aren't a bad thing. And I'd also like the fact that he has the scope of time involved. He knows it won't happen overnight, but he also believes that his one part in just being a hero and leading by example can spearhead future generations. As we flash back to the battle between him and Spinner, he then yells out, I was persecuted too. And no, the people who hurt me aren't justified, but there has to be a better way. Spinner says, don't care, destroy all. As Shoji powers up, and Shoji then rushes towards Spinner saying, think about how to make use of that rage. I know you can, because we all have got scars we carry. Then we go to a panel as the leader of the Liberation Army then says, do you offer it a feasible solution? No, only pathetic cries of your ego. Our hearts have long since been hardened by society, far too hard to be moved by such childish naivety. And then Kota begins sprouting this horn from his head saying, don't you dare mock Shoji, as a swarm of birds begin to flock and fly towards the leader of the Liberation Army. And then also we get to see Shoji powering up some new ability where the flesh from his body then wraps around one of his arms, and the eyes on the tentacles just begin to wrap around, making a giant fist. Spinner, for some reason, then decides to come to and is like, ew, gross. But Shoji replies with, yeah, that's just who I am. So I think this is really cool because it looks like Shoji and Kota are about to unveil a new ability, which, like, I think is really cool because back characters don't really get too much shine in this regard. So the fact that these two are taking this moment in this huge event that has to do with the both of them pushing towards like the liberation of Heteromorphs, but two different ideals of how it's done has awakened new abilities within these two. This is very cool. I really like the direction these chapters are going, and I'm very interested to see what these new abilities are going to do. It looks like Kota's ability, I don't know, maybe he can control or send out like signals in a farther radius to be able to get more animals under his influence. That's what I would think. As far as Shoji goes, it looks like he's just manipulating his body in an aspect that he never has before. So that'll be the end of this chapter. You guys let me know what you think about the ideals that are being pushed around inside these chapters. Me personally, I really like the stance that these chapters are taking. They're really showing that My Hero Academia is a well-rounded and diverse manga. So that'll be the end of this chapter. You guys let me know what you think down in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next time. Luminary Grand signing off.